feels like not so many years ago that I was a brand new teaching assistant here at University of Toledo, sitting in exactly the same seats, exactly the same position as you were. Granted, that was 25 years ago, and so in the meantime, I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, learned even more, and so I want to share some of those things, because that first time in the classroom can be very intimidating, and so we want to help you a little bit with that, right? So first time in the classroom, hopefully you're not going to be in one of the large lecture halls. My lectures will span anywhere from a couple dozen up to 300, right? And I've had classes as small as 5. So there really is a range of class size here at the university. But basically class size, class management works the same no matter what setting you're in, right? So that probably looks a little intimidating, and it is. But remember, right, you were hired because of your content knowledge and because we thought that you would be good at this. So you have confidence. So you're entering a new phase in your education. For many of you, this means being an instructor in the classroom or a teaching assistant in a classroom or a lab. You've learned the material. That was your bachelor's. Many of you are here to get your PhD, so you might also have a master's on top of that. You know the content material. You're going to be teaching undergraduate courses. And so content is not necessarily the issue, right? Now you need to learn how to teach that material. How do you get them to get this into their head, right? And that's not such an easy idea. You're on the opposite side of the desk, right? Instead of sitting in the audience and thinking, why is she still talking, right? You're on this side of the podium, and now you're thinking, why is he asleep, right? So how can I be possibly more fascinating? So it's a new set of challenges, right? So we're going to talk about some of those. The first one is now, right, you as a TA or an instructor are an employee of the university. That is a very different situation, right? As an employee, you have rights and responsibilities. You have signed documents, right? You're getting paid for a job. That means a whole new set of strings on you, all right? So you're essentially the face of UT. When you make decisions, when you communicate with your students, your attitude with your students, that's what they think of as UT, right? When you think of UT, take a second and think, what is UT? You probably see the bell tower, right? You might see the water slide at the student union, but most people are going to think about the professors that they had classes with. That is, right, that's their interaction with UT. So your attitudes very much influence them, and they are going to reflect that attitude back to you, right? So that's a very difficult thing to develop and manage as you progress in your teaching career. And your actions also reflect back to UT. So the decisions you make, the last speaker, all those rules, all those things, you're thinking, yeah, I'm never going to read those. You really do need to read those because the decisions you make have to follow those. Now, you're new, starting out, and there are lots of people to help you. So like she said, you're going to ask, right? Always ask if you're not sure. You have a student who's up at wanting something, you say, I'm not quite sure about that. I'm going to go and ask, and I will get right back to you. And that's important. And I will get right back to you. And then you'll have learned something new. So the next time that question's asked, you have a better idea of how to answer that. Right? So we have 3 kind of areas where this falls into. One is department course related. One is physical classroom technology related. And then the last one is student issues that we need to think about. So in your department, in your course, the first thing that you need to figure out exactly is what is your role in that course, right? Some of you are going to be the instructor of record and actually responsible for the whole course. That's probably not likely in your very first semester. Many of you instead are going to be acting as a TA under an instructor of record. So you want to know, what are your rights and your responsibilities? What are you responsible for? What can you do, right? Is this your course or are you working within a framework? Is it your syllabus, or do you get to set up the rules in the syllabus? In the case of biological sciences, how many biological sciences? Okay, couple. There should be more. All right. In a multi. There should be at least 10. Yeah. Biosciences, folks? Let's see, 1, 2. There we go. All right. You know that sign-in sheet, it wasn't just for fun, right? All right. So I'll use the example of biological sciences. We have multi-section lab courses with multiple TAs, and so they have a very constrained syllabus, right? A large set of rules because we have close to 2,000 students in those labs. And the idea is that we want to, if a student has an issue, we want to make the same decision for every single TA in every single section, every single semester of every single year. So it's about consistency of application. When you get to, in our department, the upper level labs, now there's a little more freedom. Do you want to have 5 quizzes or 3 quizzes? Do you want to have a lab project or a lab exam? So then there's a little more freedom for you to work within the syllabus. So you need to know for your course that you're going to be the TA for, what exactly is your role, right? The important thing then is to talk to your department chair or your course coordinator to find out where you are, right? So that takes care of a lot of those issues. Well, I thought I could tell her that she could just take that later. Or, yeah, I extended the deadline. You weren't supposed to, right? So those kinds of things should be taken care of by that talk. All right? The syllabus. I've been writing new syllabuses in this new acceptable format. My syllabus is 8 pages long. It is a contract between me and my students. It has tons of information, not just who I am, what the course is, when we're going to be covering chapter 1, 2, 3, when the exams are, kind of thing. It also has information about academic dishonesty. It also has information about specific grading policies and deadlines. And so that becomes a contract between you and the students. You break the contract, you break the students' trust. All right? The students know then it's a roadmap for where they're going to go. Right? It probably answers 99% of their questions, right? When is my test? What chapter are we doing today? Is that homework really due Saturday? It's all in the syllabus, right? Specific information. If your course doesn't have one, which is highly unlikely at this point, right? Then one needs to be developed, right? Or if you're given a course and you don't think you have one, you would borrow one from somebody else. It's not unusual for instructors to share information so that they remember starting out brand new in that course, and they'll give you a hand getting started, right? The one thing that I would point out is that for me, exams, quiz dates, assignments dates, once I put those down in the syllabus, I never move them. Because some of our students are not coming to class every day. That's just the reality. And so they need to know, between their job and their family responsibilities, they need to know what days they absolutely have to be there, right? What kind of penalties are involved with them not being in class? That's up to the syllabus, right? Up to the instructor. But those dates I never move. And I even have language in there, what if we have a snow day? Or what if we have a water emergency? No, we're not going to have one of those. Those kinds of things. Those are solid, right? We'll move other things around, but I keep those solid. The classroom, right? So you've got your syllabus, you've got a big stack of them, you're all ready, and you get to your classroom and you think, how do I turn that on? If I turn this on, what is that going to do to, and I've got, so, right? All these buttons and knobs and computer kinds of things, you need to visit your classroom ahead of time. Visit your classroom ahead of time, a day or two ahead of time, to see what is in there and how do you work it. And if you don't know, find somebody else who does, right, to get yourself oriented. The good thing is that there's a website through Classroom Services that has an image of every single lecture room And it shows how the seating is, it shows where the computer is, it shows what where the connections are, kind of thing, all of that detail. I still prefer to actually go and physically visit it. Now you have to watch, sometimes many of the classrooms are locked because they are mediated, they have computers in there, but you can call classroom services, explain who you are, and they'll meet you and unlock it so you can look through it, all right? So that's... There's rooms that have electronic shades that you have to know which buttons to push to make them go up and down. We love technology, right? Check out the exact hardware and software. If you're a Mac person, most of our classrooms are PC-based. So you might have a problem taking a PowerPoint from your Mac and plugging it into the PC that is the classroom computer, right? Or if you have some particular movie that you want to play, and the classroom computer does not have that piece of software. So you want to, if it's really important, you want to test things out beforehand. You can bring your own laptop to plug in, right? It just means you have to lug an extra item around, and you have to figure out how to plug it in and change the ports, kind of thing. But there are options. Again, classroom services is a real friend. So that's Classroom Support Services. They are very nice. You treat them nice, they treat you nice, right? You pick up the phone and start yelling about how this is not ready and I am the instructor and what are you not doing because you did not invest any time in figuring this out. They will come, they will fix your problem, but they aren't going to really like you, right? That's just the way it works. On the other hand, you pick up the phone, hey, I'm having a problem. I tried what I could, and I'd really appreciate if you come over, right? There's a difference in approach. You treat people nicely, they treat you nicely in return. All right? So let me point out, this is their webpage, Classroom Support Services. Excellent webpage, right? So let me just point out a few things along there, if I can see them. So there's, that's where you would click on to get the multi-purpose, the general classrooms. That has the image of the classroom and all of the technology in it, right? And then the installed software. The computers inside the classroom are locked down. You cannot install programs onto the C drive, all right? That's on purpose so that you can't screw things up, all right? So you need to figure out, is the software you need on there? If it's not, you contact Classroom Services and ask what you can do about that software. And worst case scenario, you bring your own laptop so that you can run that particular piece of software, all right? And, right, there are particular pieces of software that are run through Classroom Services. So lecture capture, Echo 360, if you're going to be doing that for your class, that's information there. Turning Point 5, the clicker system, which you may or may not have heard of before. I use those in all of my classes for attendance and interactivity. That system is, the information is there. So a great website. And then if we go to one of the other places to find information about technology is the Learning Ventures website. They do our online distance education and our web-assisted, technology-assisted classes. And so here, right, when we look at this big web page, there's a whole thing for faculty resources, right? They are there to help you. Blackboard can be very large, very confusing, has lots of whistles and bells, but most of you only need to use it for very few things, right? So if we look under there, and they run in-person workshops, they have video workshops, right? And they'll come to you or you can come to them. So this summer I was developing my first online class for non-majors biology, and I think I spent almost every day emailing back and forth with one of the instructional designers. Well, how do I do this? Well, could I do that? And he says, no, this doesn't look right. Do this again. So those people at Learning Ventures are there to help you. You have to reach out to them. All right? Student issues. Some of these are going to be covered today, certainly, right? We have to think about our students. And so you think about students in the classroom, how do they act with each other, towards each other, right? That's part of your responsibility that you might not have thought about before. When you're on that side of the lectern, you expect people to be nice to you and you don't really have to deal much with it. When you're on this side of the lectern, your job is to make sure that they're playing nice together, right? That you're setting the tone, that you're intervening when it needs to be, setting the appropriate tone, right? Academic dishonesty we already heard about, right? So what if that happens? Who do I talk to? What can I do to prevent it? Outside of the classroom, we'll hear talks on each one of these. The FERPA laws are very much about right to privacy. All right. And again, something that you might not have thought so much about. But as an instructor, you have access to personal information to dozens, if not hundreds, of people. Personal information, grade information. They tell you things. Who do you tell that to? Right. So you need to be very aware. I use a story. Years ago, I had a technician when I was lab coordinator. I had a technician who was having an issue, a union issue. And we went out to lunch at a local Chinese place, and we were sitting there, my lab tech and I, and at the next table was a group of people, and she noticed her name. She had an unusual name. She noticed her name. And she thought, well, what is that? And as we listened in on their conversation, they were talking details, gory details about her case in the union and making crude remarks and that kind of thing, right? That is absolutely inappropriate. And so when you're talking, you're standing in the grocery line, yeah, I have this student, he is so stupid. You want to hear what he wrote on his exam? Who's standing in front of you? Who's standing behind you? Who's in the next aisle? His mother, a nephew, just somebody who thinks that is the way UT talks about their student. So we need to be very, very conscientious about what we know and how we share it. Accessibility, I've had the challenge of having 2 blind students in my non-majors course. Biology is a very visual science, and so the idea of trying to express that in a way that a blind student would capture that information, that was a challenge, right? I didn't see it as oh my God, that's what I got to do. It is what you have to do. It is the law that you have to do that. But if you face it as a challenge, this is a way for me to develop in my teaching so that I can provide more information to a wider audience. You approach it in a better manner. So they'll talk all about that. Sexual harassment, you would think, like academic dishonesty, that you just don't have to think about it. As a student, right, you may never encounter it. As an instructor, if you see hints of it, then it's up to you to do something about it. It's your right, your responsibility to do something about that. All right? So if we look at each one of these, how do they treat each other? How do they treat you, right? What are you going to put up with? How do you treat your students? They're individual people deserving respect, sometimes more than others. Here's what I tell my TAs. You can think anything you want. Behind this face, you can think in your mind anything you want. But what this face shows, what this mouth says nothing but equal, responsible, civil discourse. Right? So you can have your private thoughts. We can't prevent you from having that. But what comes out of your mouth, how you treat people, the way your face works has to be the way that would be representative of UT. All right? And essentially what you're doing is you're modeling correct behavior. So we already got the academic dishonesty one, right? Students may never, some of our freshman students may never have run into this before, and so they simply don't know what academic dishonesty is, right? They've always done this, or we've always done that. Well, new day, right? So in my labs, we had a thing where if the first time you did it, you were brought in, you were told it was wrong, you were given 0 points, right? So there is a penalty to it. But if you did it a second time, then we go full academic dishonesty, which was an F in the course, right? So we want students to understand what it is they're doing And when they understand what it is they're doing, then full consequences, right? I use SafeAssign on Blackboard for all written material. It's a really easy tool to use. You can set up a Blackboard site and use very little of it except for SafeAssign and maybe posting grades. It's not a hard tool to use. FERPA, right? Beware of who you discuss details with, where you discuss details, right? You're never really off the job, right? Your students see you in Kroger's and Home Depot, right? They see you, and so what you're talking about, how you're talking, becomes a real issue. Accessibility. Are you doing what you need to do for all of your students to be successful? So I've had a number of, I teach the non-majors courses, and I've had a number of students that come through from Student Disability Services. You will know because you will get a form in your email that says who that student is and exactly what is required. You don't have to guess. You don't decide whether you're going to give it to them or not. And along with that is also, well, I'm not sure how I should do that. You call them, Student Disability Services, and ask, well, how am I going to implement this? You're not in this alone, but there are rights, responsibilities for those students when you have them in your class. And I always focus on it as a challenge, right? This is a new challenge to my teaching. Sexual harassment, right, it just can't be tolerated. You have a new role, right, and it can't be tolerated. So that's a lot of, in the first presentation and this presentation, a lot of you must, you will, and you think, how am I going to remember what to do when, right? Here's my suggestions. Ask, right? Ask your instructor of record if you're working under somebody. Ask a mentor in your department, right? Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask another graduate student because they may be as clueless as you are, right? But ask somebody who's been around the block a while. And when I have a problem, I've been here 25 years, when I have a problem and I'm not quite sure who to call, I call a likely office, explain in general what it is that I'm looking for, what my problem is, and 99% of the time, they're going to say, oh, you need this other office. Let me transfer you, or let me give you the phone number, right? They're very helpful, right? So don't be worried about that. And again, I did say I give a very general description. If I'm not at the right office, I don't want to give up if it's a sexual harassment issue, if it's an academic dishonesty issue. I'm not going to bring in any details until I'm talking to the right person, right? So you can give kind of a general description. And, right, you have a whole list of people, right? Oh, I think I actually have it circled, right? Academic administrative offices gives a whole list. This is at the bottom of every UT webpage, right? The footer has a whole list of administrative offices. You click on one, that kind of looks like the right one. All right, give them a call, general description, and they'll get you to the right place. If you have an idea of who it is that you want to call, Campus Directory is your friend, right? Campus Directory, as long as you have a decent spelling of their name, will find their office location, phone number, email address, all of that. So that down there in the footer is often overlooked, but a huge benefit. All right. Teaching. Yeah, there's not one way to do anything. The basic idea is, what do you teach, right? The course description guides that, right? So you have an idea of what it is, but how is a big gray cloud. There's no single right way. There are people that will tell you this is the best way, this is the only way, this is the way I teach. You have to develop your own, right? So you model your best professors, and you try to keep things in mind. Diversity of backgrounds, abilities, experiences. Not all of your students are all of the same age. They aren't all of the same background. They don't all have the same experiences. So when you use anecdotes or illustrations or images, you want to make sure that you're spreading the wealth around. You have an image of different kinds of people. You ask different people questions, right? And always be respectful. All right? So again, no right way. I have gotten into in the last couple years this idea called active learning, right? I'm not doing a very good job of modeling it right now because you're sitting there and I'm talking to you and you're thinking, God, when is this over? How many snacks are left over there, right? You're not really paying attention. In active learning, the idea is that I would ask you questions and you would have a chance to discuss and talk back. We might, instead of just me reading the chapter to you, me reading the PowerPoint to you, instead I would have given you the PowerPoint ahead of time, and we would have now gone through and said, okay, each group come up with an example of academic dishonesty and what you would have done about it, right? And you'd work at your tables, and then I might call on 3 or 4 tables and we talk about, well, what example did you have and how did that work? There are caveats to it. You cover less information, but you get a deeper understanding. So that's something that's working its way through the university. You'll probably hear more about that, right? That's one of those that you have to have a certain amount of confidence to be able to run a classroom like that. But if you're interested, there are lots of people on UT campus that are trying this method. It's very valuable. So tips and advice for the first day. First day sets an impression in their mind. All right? So arrive 20 minutes early so that you're there, so that you can find the buttons and all that kind of stuff, get everything set up, and so that you're ready for is this my class? Who are you? Where do I sit? Is this the right book? We get them in the wrong room all the time and have to say, no, this is 1201, next door is 1205. They really are different, you know. They copy down their schedule and they copy it wrong, so we got to sort them out. And stay 20 minutes after for the people who are like, I'm not sure I'm in the right class. I didn't get a syllabus. Where can I get a syllabus? I walked in late. Did you say anything important? Again, this is, you don't go, well, it's on Blackboard. Let me help you, right? It's not, the first day is not the last day. What I do is when they come into class, I have a welcome slide up on from my PowerPoint that says what section it is and what my name is. So that avoids a lot of that am I in the wrong room kind of thing. I start class on time, right? They need to get used to that. And there are penalties for me for walking in late because we use clickers. Clicker questions start at the beginning of the period and go all the way to the end of the period. So if you come in late, you miss questions. If you leave early, you miss questions. If you fall asleep in the middle of class, you miss questions. Go over the syllabus. I go over it. I hit the highlights, right? So that you can emphasize the important things, the things that you want them to see. Pass it out. Tell them it's required. My courses in Blackboard, I actually make a syllabus quiz. When are my office hours? What happens if you're late to the exam? Those kinds of things so that they read the quiz in the syllabus in detail. And I would also that first day cover some course content just so that you can get in. Usually the first chapter is very light. It's an overview kind of thing. It gives them a flavor of where they're going, right? So that's just a suggested first day. You're getting ready to set sail on a giant adventure, right? 25 years ago, I was in the same kind of spot you were. I was petrified. I was very young. My students I knew were going to be much older than I was. And it comes with experience. You will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. I make mistakes. You will learn from them. You will get better, all right? So you work hard, willing to learn, and you're going to do a good job, all right? Thank you. Any questions?